Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today we've got a video on why New Jersey was chosen to be brought back during the Vietnam War. Of all of the ships available, why New Jersey? So we've talked about this in the past. I'm not sure if it's had its own video dedicated to it, but we've at least talked about it in other videos. And for today's video, we have two sources that we've recently found that add more light on this decision. The first one is the unclassified command history of the ship from 1968. And this is a large historical document prepared by the ship's company for Naval History and Heritage Command that talks about what the ship did during that time. And these command histories, for at least since the 1960s, have been a way that all of the commands, not just ships, but aviation units, landside units, things like that, can submit their histories, and there's a specific criteria for how this works. So I'm just going to read the first two paragraphs here of the Battleship's command history for 1968, which is an 80-page long document. So in August of 1967, the decision was made to commission New Jersey for the third time. This time to serve for the duration of hostilities in Southeast Asia. This was prepared at the end of 1968, beginning of 1969. So at this point, they don't know that she's going to be decommissioned by mid-69. The program change decision, which approved the activation of the battleship, was for employment in the Pacific Fleet to augment the Naval Gunfire Support Force in Southeast Asia. The real motivation behind the activation was that, quote-unquote, a major caliber gunfire support ship is necessary if we are to continue, after October 1968, the present deployment level of two such ships, in parentheses, major caliber gunfire support, end parentheses, in Southeast Asia, end quotation. Much has been said as to why the Secretary of Defense chose the battleship over another 8-inch cruiser. Some contend it was because the 16-inch guns have a greater range and pack a more powerful punch. This was not the rationale of the Secretary of Defense. His primary contention was that the battleship was significantly harder, i.e. less vulnerable, than the 8-inch cruiser. Additionally, the Secretary's decision stated analysis shows that the battleship with 16-inch guns provides greater effectiveness for equal cost than the cruiser with 8-inch guns in this limited mission, naval gunfire support. There were 4 battleships in the reserve fleet, the 4 Iowa class. The decision to activate New Jersey, rather than any of the other 3, was non-political. New Jersey was in fact in better material condition than any of the others. New Jersey had an extensive overhaul just prior to mothballing. Missouri had a speed restriction as a result of the grounding off Norfolk. Wisconsin had a fire forward of the wardroom in the fire control tower support, which destroyed much of the electrical wiring vital for fire control. And that is the end of those first 2 paragraphs. So, why was New Jersey chosen? They're saying that a battleship is as expensive to operate as a heavy cruiser, which I'm not entirely sure is accurate, but you certainly get more bang for your buck with a battleship. Your 16-inch guns are twice as large. You're pulling from a different supply chain. So the 8-inch cruisers that are left are cannibalizing other Baltimore, Oregon City, and Des Moines class cruisers for parts. You bring back a battleship, and now you've got other ships to cannibalize there. And it's got more protection, more armor plating. Why New Jersey? That spelled it out a little bit. New Jersey had a year-long yard period to mothball, getting ready for her 1957 inactivation. The other 3 Iowas had a significantly shorter mothballing period, so they were put away in less good of condition. They had less time to get them put away. It mentioned Missouri has a speed restriction. I've heard both ways on that she did not have a speed restriction and that she did have a speed restriction. And just because this is an official government document does not necessarily mean that it is citing accurate sources. For whatever reason, Missouri is not chosen. Maybe it's the speed restriction because of the grounding. It could also be that Missouri has the most mileage of any Iowa-class battleships at this point. so they want to pick something with less mileage. Wisconsin's fire. We are in the base of the conning tower, forward of the wardroom, and this is the fire control tube right here. All the electrical wiring from the main battery rangefinder on the top of the superstructure, 12 stories above us, comes down through this armored tube all the way down to the fire control equipment 4 decks below us in the ship. I have talked in the past that we had heard that there was a fire on board. This is the first government document that we have seen an actual mention of the fire. We've only heard about it circumstantially. And we never knew the location of the fire or the extent. You know, the ship's in mothballs. How bad could a fire be? Did it gut the entire ship? That seems difficult given how compartmentalized these things are. Or did it destroy something critical? And now we know that it was a fire, an electrical fire in this tube here. And I imagine it heated up the outside of this tube, which had 16-inch thick armor. That fire heated this up enough that it lit other stuff on fire that was in spaces like this one. This space has been heavily modified in the 80s, so it doesn't look like it would have in the 50s configuration when Wisconsin had the burn. You can see that they've added air conditioning units in here. But something was being stored in here that was able to catch on fire, and it spread throughout this entire conning tower structure. We know this because check out this one picture that we have. We were able to find this picture in the collection of more than 600 photographs from Richard Landgraf, who was in charge of the Battleship reactivation program at Long Beach in 1982. So he is going through the various battleships and takes this picture, which is actually in the old flag space area on the O2 level on Wisconsin. That is the Admiral's stateroom area that gets deleted and turned into the Combat Engagement Center later in the 80s. So a lot of what you're seeing here does not exist anymore. But you can see the severe fire damage around the closet door that is built around this oval-shaped conning tower and in the overhead there. So you can see the fire that they say happens on the main deck forward of the wardroom in the conning tower, and you can see that it has spread up at least that high, 2 stories above us. And if it has burned that hot and been able to heat through multiple bulkheads, then it has done a tremendous amount of damage to the fire control wiring inside the tube. And that's ultimately why Wisconsin is the last Iowa to be reactivated in 1988, because it was such a more involved case. So Missouri's got the grounding, Wisconsin has that. What was Iowa's sin? Poor Iowa was moored inboard of the 3 battleships. Missouri's over in Bremerton, but the 3 Iowas are here in the Philadelphia Navy Yard. Iowa right next to the pier, New Jersey right next to her, and Wisconsin outboard. The way I've always heard the story is that they wanted Wisconsin first because she was right there. They could just tow her right over to the dry dock and start the work. They go on board her, see the fire, and close the doors. So they go to the next ship in line, New Jersey. Unfortunately, New Jersey, like I said, had the longest yard period, so she has chosen to be reactivated. They had to move Wisconsin out of the way, take New Jersey into dry dock, and then bump Wisconsin back up against Iowa. And then we know Iowa is in the second best shape because in the 80s, when they reactivate these ships again, they pick New Jersey first because she had been used just a decade earlier instead of 2 decades earlier. Makes sense. Which one do they pick second? Iowa. And then Missouri is the third choice. And then finally, Wisconsin is the last choice 6 years into the battleship program. Are there any other legends about Iowa-class battleships you'd like to see us confirm or deny? Let us know in the comment section down below. The Wisconsin fire getting her deselected for Vietnam is one that I've heard for years, but I've never seen documentation that actually had it in writing or, much less, photography that shows what the fire damage is. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below for ways you can donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about us and our channel. Thanks for watching.